Hello, everyone. Thank you for attending this session today. I am AJ from the Line Yahoo ID and Access team. Today's session will introduce ID-JAG, the next generation authorization standard for the AI era, as shown on the slide. Thank you. Since the title is a bit long, we've also prepared a simpler subtitle. Who authorized the AI agent to translated into Japanese? Authorization in the age of AI. That is, the user error, the authority that humans possess. How the AI agent can safely act on behalf of the user. Gil, I will talk about this concept. This is today's agenda. First, in Agenda 1, before we delve into the ID-JAG technology, first, I will explain what AI security is in the first place, and the current situation in the AI era, and after introducing the challenges we face, will then explain. I will explain ID-JAG, which is attracting attention as a solution to this challenge. Next, I will explain how ID-JAG actually works and show you the actual process with a demo. And on the introduction of ID-JAG, the benefits for developers utilizing AI, and let me summarize the benefits for organizations that provide AI internally. To conclude, I would like to summarize today's presentation. First, before discussing AI security, please allow me to briefly introduce myself. Shimaoka and I are currently working on our in-house identity and access platform. I am in charge of the operation and development of Athens, while performing in-house operations. In the current AI era, global IT companies and global leaders in the field, we are focusing on and researching how to address AI security issues. AI is a recent trend. I believe many of you already have a concrete image in mind. On the other hand, what AI security is might be a bit vague. When I think about AI security, there's a metaphor that often comes to mind. That is a trip. I don't think we go on trips solely for safety. To have new experiences in unfamiliar lands. You will experience a joy that you don't usually get in your daily life. What we often refer to. This is to experience the work. However, if we approach this solely from a security perspective, you might find yourself in a dilemma. Everyone fearing the risks. If we prioritize safety alone, in the end, throughout the trip, I'll be confined to my hotel room. A hotel room may be managed and secure. You probably wouldn't call it travel if you don't step outside at all. The introduction of AI is similar to this. As we introduce AI into our company, the purpose of developing a new agent is to, it shouldn't just be about building an airtight security system. In this turbulent AI era, to survive the competition through AI, ahead of any other company, this breaks away from existing methods. Ultimately, a service that anyone would want to recommend. This is to provide wow. Just concerned about security. If we were to close the door on AI adoption, you will lose your competitiveness in the AI era. AI security is not a barrier to new changes. Should function as a foundation for safely moving forward. Today, I will discuss how we are building that foundation. So as the script for that, what kind of changes are happening now? Shimaoka-san will now explain this. Thank you, AJ, for the introduction. I am Shimaoka. From here, I will explain the current state and challenges of security in the age of AI. Until very recently, our use of AI was relatively simple. For example, it's a usage method where you give simple instructions like summarize this document or organize the text minutes of this meeting and receive a response. At this time, the it remained in the role of an excellent advisor. In other words, it generates and responds with text, images, and so on in response to prompts. Ultimately, who accesses external systems, presses buttons, and actually executes tasks. It was still human. For example, when the AI at that time was, what happens if we make a more complex request, such as summarizing this meeting, saving it to cloud storage, and emailing it only to participants? At the time, AI could summarize, but it couldn't. Existing cloud storage and against the email system, we did not have all four of these methods. Ultimately, copy the summary and save it to cloud storage. It was a human who composed the email and pressed the send button. However, the situation has been changing rapidly recently. With the advancement of technologies such as MCP, A2A, and agent-to-agent, various internal tools and systems can now be integrated with AI. Now, if we enter the same prompt, AI will perform the summarization itself, stored in cloud storage via MCP. You can also send emails via MCP. In other words, current AI is no longer merely an advisor that provides answers. It is an entity that performs operations that humans used to do. In other words, it can be said that the era of working as an agent has arrived. This allows us not only to ask questions to AI, but also by instructing the Claude code as well. We were able to achieve a dramatic improvement in productivity. However, from the perspective of protecting an organization's systems and data, we need to ask one crucial question here. What about it? The question is whether we can fully trust this AI agent. Of course, this is not to say that we should stop introducing AI. To achieve innovative speed, we will likely entrust more tasks to AI agents in the future. However, there are some facts we need to keep in mind. Unlike humans, the point is that AI agents cannot be entities that bear responsibility themselves. An AI agent, as the name suggests, an agent that temporarily borrows user permissions to act. The responsibility for the actions taken by the agent ultimately lies with the one who authorized it. The user themselves or the organization you belong to will be in alignment. Let's look at a simple example. Let's say you instructed an AI agent to share the meeting minutes only with participants. The summary itself might have been good. However, the agent misjudged the scope of sharing. What would happen if you were to send meeting minutes containing important management decisions to a public channel visible to all employees under your name? You, who instructed that AI agent to perform operations, cannot escape responsibility for the results. Even if the requesting user themselves has write permissions to a public channel, as in this example. There are often cases where you want to control the behavior of an AI agent that has been delegated authorization. However, at the same time, what should we do if we want to avoid developers who want to promote the use of AI being held back or slowed down by the time it takes to manage these detailed permissions? Is there a way to solve these two problems simultaneously? Of course there is. That solution is the theme of today's talk, ID-JAG. ID-JAG is a new authorization standard currently being developed primarily by companies such as Okta, which is famous for its IDP products. This specification It was first published in 2024, and then in June 2025, it was announced as the next generation authorization standard that we officially support. It is currently being developed within the IETF Auth Working Group, and active development continues, with the specification updated just last month. Furthermore, even in the official documentation for MCP, ID-JAG is introduced as a method for centrally managing access control to MCP servers in an enterprise environment. By the way, this document just became stable from draft around last week, which shows the momentum of ID-JAG. What ID-JAG actually achieves, in terms of its specifications, is this. In the draft specification document, I've been explaining the role of ID-JAG in this way, but to summarize this content briefly, the core of ID-JAG is the goal is to extend the trust of SSO to APIs. In other words, ID-JAG has been established through SSO, which has been established so far. The trust in user authentication by IDP, it also applies to API access between applications or between AI agent services. This aims to centrally manage, on the IDP side, which applications can access which other APIs and to what extent. Technically, RFC 8693, Token Exchange, it combines two existing RFC specifications, RSFC and Authorization Grant. So how do these two specifications combine and operate? AJ, could you please explain the mechanism? Thank you, Shimaka-san. Let's take a look at how this ID-JAG actually works, its mechanism. I believe you are already familiar with the role of the IDP. It is an authentication foundation that is essential for modern enterprises, centrally managing user accounts and credentials. Internal applications, and external SaaS approved by the company, or when logging into the AI service provided internally, I don't think there's a need to create new IDs or passwords for each service. Instead, internal users who, even when logging into an in-house AI service, by switching to a trusted IDP, you will be able to log in directly. When you have successfully logged in, internally, an authentication token, called an ID token, is issued by the IDP. The ID token, everyone's names or such as email addresses. It is a token that proves who you are. When asking an AI something, you can send this ID-B token. Here, if you ask AI, not just a general question, but let's say you've made a request that requires connecting to cloud storage or an email service. In this case, the AI acts on your behalf because they will be operating as agents. The ID-JAG flow will be initiated. The ID-JAG flow basically, all internal services, an authorization server, such as Auth0 issues, even if an access token needs to be verified and confirmed. There is no need to pre-issue an access token and pass it to the AI agent. In AI generative agent models, I just received it by sending the ID token to the IDP as a proxy for the person whose ID token was sent by the AI agent. An authorization server that proves certain operations are permitted. You can reserve ID-JAG. Of course, even if there is a request from an IDP, it is not issued unconditionally. IDP, this AI agent, as a proxy for this person. What code to take? After checking the predefined internal security policies, it issues an ID-JAG with defined permissions. Do you remember the problem in the previous example where the AI agent mistakenly shared information in a public channel? What if we define that operation in public channels is prohibited? Even when operating on behalf of a human with authority, ID-JAGs are issued without the fabric chain authority. The AI agent issued the ID-JAG via the IDP and send it to the authorization server and receive an access token for external resources. Naturally, this also applies to the permissions of the access token. You cannot grant more permissions than what is described in ID-JAG. In other words, it will not have authorization to public channels. Received the access token, and AI agents are ultimately, by passing this access token, it can perform tasks on behalf of humans under restricted permissions. And if by any chance the AI makes a wrong judgment, even if you try to share it again on a public channel, first of all, the access token that has been secured has no authority. Access will be denied. This concludes the overall flow that ID-JAG realizes. Now, I will show you a demo of how the flow I just explained actually works. The demo I'm about to show you is publicly available on the GitHub ASINs community. It is based on Aliyah the hard way. The environment configuration for this demo is as follows. The IDP responsible for login is Keycloak, an API server that mimics documents within the company. And an MCP server is set up to connect to that API. Now for the demo. Let's begin. This app is an AI agent that can be used in a web browser. These are applications already familiar to you, such as Google's Gemini and OpenAI's ChatGPT. First, I will try to log in. I will attempt to log into my account using Keycloak, the IDP that this AI agent trusts. My account. I have successfully logged in with ID-JAG. So let's actually send a request. With ID-JAG, instead of users making authorization decisions, the system controls them based on internal policies. Therefore, a confirmation screen asking, "Do you agree?" is not displayed. Let's take a look. We will try to retrieve documents from the API server using natural language. As you can see, I was able to retrieve 4 documents saved by default without being prompted for consent. Now, let's try deleting the document. Let me delete the top document. The deletion failed, but this leaf is what I used to log in earlier. It's not because this account doesn't have permission. The deletion failed because it is controlled by the company's policy that AI cannot be used for deletion. Now, let's switch to the Admin Management screen to check where this policy is managed. For this demo, we have prepared a simple UI for Adobe. When you successfully log in using an Adobe account. As you can see, the user and ID-JAG have direct permission to delete documents. What about deletion operations using AI? As indicated by the red line, it is blocked. Here, the organization changes existing internal security policies. What happens if we permit deletion using AI? as an administrator. Let's try changing the deletion permission to allow. As you can see, the status has changed to green, meaning permitted. Let's return to the AI screen. Let's try requesting a deletion, similar to what we did earlier. This time, it was successfully deleted. Asking the user, "Do you agree?" each time, instead of storing those results on the app side, based on scenario policies. The benefit of ID-JAG is that it can automatically and securely control authorization. How was it? Actually, there are other mates of ID-JAG. Mr. Shimoka will provide a more detailed explanation. Thank you, AJ. First, let's talk about the more detailed benefits of ID-JAG. We will look at this from the perspective of users who actually use AI. Recently, I've been using AI agents, or battling with permission confirmation pop-ups asking, "Are you sure you want to perform this operation every time?" An option such as DLERC skip permission in Claude Code. And have you ever felt uneasy inside while using things like Yora mode? Firstly, asking users to consider and approve such fine-grained permissions themselves is poor UX and wastes users' time. If there is no authorization, the system should automatically reject it. And if there is authorization, it should be executed without asking the user. The developer's original role is to produce value, not to confirm and approve AI permissions. These security decisions are not something individual developers should be concerned about. ID-JAG frees our internal AI talent from such non-essential worries, creating an environment where they can concentrate on producing their true value. So, are the benefits of ID-JAG only for the user side? Of course not. From the perspective of companies and organizations, there are also significant benefits. The first is the low implementation cost. For companies above a certain size, I believe that many of you already have your own IDP and authorization server. To implement ID-JAG, there is no need to build new components from scratch. For example, in companies like Line Yahoo, where IDPs such as Okta or Dex are already established as IDPs, the ID-JAG mechanism can be implemented at a low cost without additional components. If there is an environment where Athens, an in-house authentication and authorization platform, serves as the authorization server, then, furthermore, Athens has already implemented the main functions of ID-JAG, so it can be used without additional implementation. Furthermore, even if the ADP does not have the ID-JAG issuance function, by establishing a trust relationship between the authorization server and the IDP, it will be possible to introduce the ID-JAG ecosystem into organizations. This means there's no need to build a new authentication and authorization infrastructure from scratch. What is the next merit? The advantage is that enterprise-wide security policies can be centrally managed. For example, even if a specific employee, such as a system administrator, has strong permissions, in an ID-JAG environment, the organization's security policy is applied. AI agents will not be able to directly use user permissions. The existing model, which relies on individual user consent for access to external resources, is due to the priority of operational efficiency. As a result, there is a structural problem where everything is easily authorized by default. ID-JAG is, this judgment is separated from the individual. We will shift to centralized management that facilitates company-wide governance. applying a uniform security policy to all employees, numbering in the thousands or tens of thousands. This will lead to improved security for the organization. And finally, lending and visibility. In an environment without ID-JAG, AI agents directly use user permissions. The audit logs related to authorization should when which user. It is common for only rough records to remain, such as which system was accessed. On the other hand, in an ID-JAG environment, more detailed information can be utilized. This is the access token data actually issued by the ID-JAG flow from the information contained in this. Which employee instructed the AI agent? And within what policy scope can the AI agent? Through which company-approved MCP or agent? Ultimately, which system was accessed? This is because it can acquire such information. It will be possible to record more transparent logs. This information can be used in various ways, including organizational security audits. That concludes my explanation of the benefits of introducing ID-JAG. Finally, I would like to ask AJ to summarize this session. Yes, 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 yes. Finally, I will summarize this session. Today, within this limited time, the background of ID-JAG and mechanism of operation, and the benefits of implementation. We confirmed this through a demo. I would like to reproduce the ID-JAG test in my own environment. I believe some of you may be thinking that. For those in that direction, the Athens community we have released a hands-on guide called Arizaga Hardware, Claude Code, Keycloak, Athens, and combining it with an MCP server. We would like you to verify the entire flow of ID-JAG. If you're interested, please take a look. Now, I'd like to return to the travel analogy I mentioned at the beginning. The hotel room might be managed and secure. I believe that if we just stay there, the real journey will not begin. The same is true for the major change brought about by AI. It's still unfamiliar, just because there are unknown risks. Your organization forever. You can't keep it locked in a safe room. However, we are not moving towards AI utilization without any preparation. We are going out with AI security. In other words, it's not about blindly trusting AI. Under whose responsibility? What authority? To what extent authorization has been delegated to the AI agent? To create a system where we can clearly understand what is happening. And the most powerful way to achieve that is, I believe it is ID-JAG, which I introduced today. However, regardless of the technology or method chosen, line Yahoo will continue to be with AI. We are embarking on a new journey. Before you all utilize AI to create new innovations, such an AI agent, I hope you will ask the question, who authorized this AI agent? Our organization. This question will be answered more clearly, more securely, and to impress more users, something that makes you want to introduce it to someone. Wow, this should bring us one step closer. With that, I will conclude my presentation. Thank you for listening for so long.